My name is Chris Parker. I'm an Associate Project Director at the Georgia Health Policy Center at the Andrew Young School of Policy Studies, Georgia State University. So I've been connected to cancer as a provider of care, as a caregiver of family members who themselves were diagnosed with cancer, and I am a cancer survivor for the last 3 years. My father was diagnosed when he was 60 years of age with prostate cancer and had a radical prostatectomy done, followed up with radiotherapy and hormonal therapy before succumbing to the disease 15 years later. My youngest sister was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was in her 30s, which was treated by a lumpectomy, and she's actually a breast cancer survivor for more than 15 years. My older sister was diagnosed with breast cancer and had a radical mastectomy and chemotherapy, and she continues to survive some 10 years later. And 3 years ago, I was actually diagnosed with prostate cancer myself. In the interim there, my mother was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, to which she succumbed 3 years ago. So I'm living as a cancer survivor with other cancer survivors in my family. So it's funny, because you'd think that as a care provider, I would probably know all that there needs to be known about survivorship. But I learned about survivorship through the experiences of my family and doing my own individual searches online and otherwise to determine what was perhaps best for them. And did the same thing for myself. The issue of survivorship is one that's very near to my heart, because I've recognized in my own journey and my own experience that it's been very hard to get others to understand what a survivor goes through. Invariably, even with your providers, there is a sense that once you've actually had the diagnosis made, especially if it's made early, once you've had treatment done and you seem to be okay, that you kind of just re-enter the normal world. With survivorship, there is a new normal that's established. I've said it to friends and I've said it to others, that you don't go through any day in life without the diagnosis of cancer kind of hanging over you as a cloud. You can't have a headache, that's a normal headache. You can't have a viral infection with a fever, that's normal. Because you're constantly worrying that either the cancer has come back or a new cancer somewhere in your body has been generated. And so I learned that I had to be my best advocate, and I had to be the best advocate for those folks who were around me. I think it's extremely important for survivors themselves and those who care for them to be very clear on what survivorship means. While I've given examples based on my own experience, I do know that while I was in clinical practice, my referrals for patients who actually had cancer was such that I was always trying to think about what they would need in the long term, even though I didn't actually know as much as I would have hoped at the time. I think it's important because for survivors to have really quality lives going forward, they need to understand protocols of checks. They need to understand what to look for, what are the first signs and symptoms of something not right. They need to understand what are the potential side effects, both short-term and long-term, of some of their treatment. So I've changed a lot of my eating and kind of physical activity habits, but most of the eating, not as much the physical activity. So I've tried to know as much as I can in terms of current research. So to the extent that you can know what to do and then do it, I think you put yourself in a really good position. So I've tried to do some of that. And spiritually, I spend a lot of time just trying to ensure that, from a standpoint of faith, I'm connected to a higher being. And then I try and enjoy life. I think the important thing is not to make the stressors around us get to that place where they begin to influence our health. And so since the diagnosis, I've done, I think, a much better job of ensuring that physically, mentally, and spiritually, I'm in a stable place. just from the standpoint of being able to continue on living as a survivor, I wish I'd had an opportunity to have all of this information in one place. I've shared with a few colleagues how difficult it was, even as a practitioner, to literally find some of this information in one place. You searched online, you read what you could, and then you kind of pieced all the information together. It would have been great to kind of have, so if you're been diagnosed with prostate cancer, here's what you need to know, both in terms of treatment options, and then surviving thereafter. What happens 5 years later? What happens 10 years later? That would have been great.